Okay, so good evening to everyone. And first of all, I'd like to say it was super exciting to see how many people want to get into big tech. So thank you for that. And it's really exciting to talk to everyone. I did see who wanted to get in, so I'll definitely help them out a little bit more. But jokes aside, this is the last talk of the day, and I want to welcome you all. Generally, we do save best for the last, but you get me. So lesson number one, life ain't fair all the time. My name is Nitin. I work at Microsoft. I am excited and honored to be here. I am not nervous at all, delivering my first keynote talk. Yes, I am going to talk a bit about how to show up and stand out in big tech, product management in general, and there are a few components I want to share from a big tech perspective. Let's get cracking. The first slide that I have here is kind of a techie way of saying hey everyone also. I thought it's a tech conference, so that would only make sense. This was actually one of the first coding command that I had learned, and maybe for many of you here as well. So hello to everyone. And two things I want to say to quickly ground the conversation that we're going to have. And of course, like as few people said, Saba, as you said, it's an interactive conversation. It's a talk. So one is, as you can probably tell, I'm not originally from Canada. I'm from India. And we do have one tradition, which is kind of funny that I'm claiming it from India because it's actually for everyone. But we do acknowledge our gurus, which is teachers. Before we talk about ourselves. So what I will do throughout this talk is I will acknowledge a few people who have actually helped me understand all that I'm going to share with you here tonight. And one thing I would call out is it has a secondary objective as well, is to let you guys know that if you know those people in your network, and life, it's a small world these days. So if you know these people, do set up a conversation with them and do talk product or anything of interest that you want to talk with them. You'll thank me later. So do take note of that. And the second thing I want to say is, as you can see from the picture itself, I could have written hello world here, but I chose to take a picture, which is a plug for the product I work at Microsoft, is Windows Photos. I love photos, and I am also someone who processes visuals more than words. It's just my preference. So I am going to use more photos here throughout the deck, so get ready for that. And another plug is that we did launch the new Windows Photos for Windows 11. So if any of you are Windows 11, do try it out, and do let me know how you liked it. As a product manager, I'm always looking to get feedback. Moving forward from the plug, now let's get into the details. Before I actually get into details, I want to take a minute to not talk about me, but talk about you. And by you, I don't mean a psychotic killer way who obsesses about you, but in a way that I admire everyone here in a little less intense way, kind of going to the question which was just asked here, that, hey, how do we grow ourselves? And this is where it connects directly, growth mindset. This was the biggest reason why I actually chose to work for Microsoft, because it is one of their biggest values, to keep growing yourself, to keep being a learn-it-all instead of being a know-it-all. And that is why I want to commend you all here. You are here. As Stacy said, you are here. And that's really the biggest thing you could have done for yourself, at least for today, to grow your product skill set. And so that's the first thing I want to do is give you all a huge round of applause for being here. So help me do that. All right, so back to yours truly. I'll share a bit more about me really quickly. In terms of education, I did my B.Tech in India from one of the IITs in India, the one where Mr. Sundar Pichai went himself. Fun fact, he stayed at the same dorm where I had stayed. He had the same major that I did. He studied in the same classrooms that I did. That being said, please do not send me LinkedIn requests to get him connected to him. I know him, he does not know me. And then I did my MBA from Kellogg School of Management from Northwestern University down in Illinois, where George R. Martin himself went, Game of Thrones. And so what do you get when you combine the nerdiest college in India with George R. Martin's college? You get a nerdy storyteller. And so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to just share a few stories with you about how my experience in product management and other roles that I've had the pleasure of holding have been, and then just share some of my experiences. So we'll start with a mini story. It's the last one I show you about me. It is about time, and in the sense time is money, it is about money as well. So it's about where I have earned money. I apologize for it looking too small. I did not anticipate it. In which currencies I earned it. So these are the places I earned it at. In which currencies I earned it. I have had the pleasure to work in a few countries and file taxes in very different systems, which has been extremely fun for 12 years. And then lastly, where I spend it. Where I spend my time and money both. I would say the first place I spend it is, listening to stand-up comedians. My friends do tell me that I am Trevor Noah, with none of his looks and 1/4 of his humor. So that's one thing. The second thing is I love movies. I am crazy about them. I can talk day and night and just eat your ear off about them. But all my family is crazy about movies. So my wife would testify for that. The third thing is I come from India, and as some of you might know, we are crazy about cricket. It's a religion, so I'm very religious that way. My father is also the same, but he's religious in many different ways as well. But I love cricket. Even last night there was a match which got washed off. So sad about that a little bit. And then lastly, I love cars. My wife is actually jealous of how much time and money I spend on cars. But hey, I'm a gearhead through and through. So that's where I'm going to conclude the stuff about me, and then we're going to come to the topic, how to show up and how to stand out. So let's unpack the first one. How do we show up? What does that mean? It basically means how do we get recognized as a good PM at our role? And if I ask you, and I'll ask a few questions down the line, but what qualities are required to be a good product manager? Today we have seen a lot of them: stakeholder alignment, working with data, managing tech debt, managing tech stack overall. All of these things could be attributed to two things, which is where I'm going to tell the first teacher, my professor from my MBA, Professor Adam Waits. He taught me this concept, and my mind was blown. Literally blown, because these were the two things which to me summarized all of the qualities into two distinct areas. And those two areas are competence and warmth. So we have spoken about them today in different manners, but this is where all of them kind of distill to for me. You can think about competence as all the skill sets that you have, all the, let's say, hard skills that you have. Or in a different way, how much stuff do you know about actual product management? And then warmth is how much people would want to believe you or work with you. And it came to me in very different manners about the importance of second one, that, hey, people should want to work with you. Not just, not just that, hey, you know a lot of stuff, but people should want to work with you. And I didn't listen that much to people, and that actually was my mistake. Let me find where I am here in the slide. So both are incomplete without each other, as you might guess. But let me ask a quick question. Which one do you think is more important than the other? Anyone? Warmth. Anyone else? Yeah, I kind of built myself in a hole there, but it is warmth, as you guessed. And it's funny because, or maybe it's ironic, because enough gets said about competence, and that has been my experience. Like sitting at the chair where you guys are sitting, I've heard a lot about competence, but not as much about warmth. And that is why I wanted to spend a majority of the time today in warmth itself, and that's where we're going to kind of unpack a few things. But that doesn't mean, as I said, it's incomplete without competence as well. So let's spend a couple of quick minutes in competence, and then we'll go over to warmth. What does competence mean? Data management, customer obsession, market analysis, competition analysis. These are just some of the things, tech debt management. These are some of the skills you need to have. These are the trades of your craft. So the first thing is, of course, you need to be a master of your craft. The second thing is not just is going to be enough, but people should be able to rely on your competence. Not just being competent is enough. People should be able to rely on it. And for that, this is, I think, one of the very understated thing which I didn't realize the power of till a certain time. But when I started to do it religiously, I could see the differences happening like night and day. The minute you absolutely start delivering on whatever you said without any exception, that just takes your reliability factor in an organization from 50 to 100 overnight. The third thing I would say, which is truth and trust go hand in hand. What does that mean? It means that you should know what you are competent in, and you should also know what you are not competent in. And so the minute you know that, hey, this is something that you don't know, do call it out. I have never seen any stakeholder be angry at someone for not knowing anything. But I've seen a lot of people be unhappy about the fact that, hey, initially this was promised that this can be done, or the person knows this, and later on it comes across that, oh no, we were just trying to figure it out, which we all do, but try to be more truthful, share your vulnerabilities about what you don't know, and that will build up your competence, your reliability in your competence across the organization. The last thing I want to touch on is, again, something that we started with, growth mindset. And that's where you want to continue expanding your brain learning juice. That's all that we all are doing here today. That's something that even I am doing, and we should continue doing that. With that, I want to move on to my favorite part of this, which is warmth. So what do we mean by warmth? I'll give you a quick statement which encapsulates it. Before people really want to believe in what you're saying, they first want to believe in you. They want to work with you. They should be, really looking forward to work with you. That's the first level of relationship building. We've seen this in many conversations we have had as side tables, that you want to build those relationships, and if you want to have that warmth projected onto people. So let's break it down. How do you, build warmth? It's a very generic thing, you could almost say. Let's try to break it down. What things have helped me demonstrate that warmth? The first thing I would say is do the right thing, even when no one is watching. I think it's, again, too small, but you want to do the right thing when absolutely no one, for a fact no one is going to know about it. And I got to know about this from a friend of mine, and he is one of the most trustworthy people that I know on the planet. And so I can attest to that I know he would do the right thing when no one is watching, and that really kind of sets you up in the right way, in the right brand that you want to create for yourself in the organization. The second thing I want to talk to is kind of similar to this, is be good. This naughty and nice kind of argument has been going on since forever, but I would say that it pays to be nice, and I'll tell you a quick story about it. I was working in my previous organization, and there was a conversation, there was a meeting that we were supposed to have with some of the engineers, and it was supposed to be on a Wednesday, but it kind of kept pushing out till the point it got pushed out to Wednesday 3 p.m., and that was the only slot we could do it. Sorry, Friday 3 p.m. was the only slot we could do it. I thought about the meeting for a second, and I figured out that, hey, it's not something which cannot wait till Monday. And so I shared with the engineers that, hey, yes, we could have this meeting now, but I don't see why this can't wait till Monday. And it's my personal policy to not really, try to minimize meetings, especially after Friday 2 p.m., not ask people's time for that. And that little gesture, I cannot tell you how much it meant to them. They literally called it out, they acknowledged it, that, hey, it's really amazing, not a lot of people do that. And that kind of was the start of such an amazing work relationship with them, that we not only delivered really, really impactful projects, one of the most complex products that our organization had ever delivered, which kind of brought in, I think about 20% user growth while also reducing the product health, as in page load times, by about 15%. We delivered an amazing product, and even right now we kind of even are Instagram friends, and we even talk to each other about how we are doing. So that's the first step to really be able to deliver impact. You need to be nice. Okay, I need to also pick it up. So the third thing I'm going to do is genuine praise. That's something we all need to really learn, and I want to caveat it by saying that, hey, it's not patronizing that we want to do. We don't want to say that, hey, you did this great, and be that generic about it. But what helps making it more genuine is, for instance, instead of you saying to me that, hey, Nitin, that was a nice talk you gave, you could say that, hey, Nitin, I loved the way you used pictures in your conversation, in your talk, and the way it came across to me was much more digestible. Or you could even tell me like it sucked. But at least be specific about what you want to say. The fourth thing I would say is very understated again, is be vulnerable. In order to build warmth, you really have to open yourself up to people. And if you're an introvert, that's fine. You can figure out different ways of doing it. There is no one size fits all. But try to share your concerns, try to share your weaknesses, try to be an actual human being instead of a person who's just there to get stuff done. We all will get stuff done, but the more we kind of develop this warmth, the more you literally will get stuff done. And I actually started, for instance, a spotlight series at work recently, where the idea is just to share about, yes, your strengths, but also your weaknesses and the things you're concerned about. And one of my coworkers literally said one thing, which was the best thing which could encapsulate this will really help us create better bonds across the organization. And that is what has started now happening, where each and every product manager is every month doing a spotlight series for themselves. So be vulnerable. And the last thing I would say is, maybe not like Mr. Brando here, expecting favors, but do help people. Just give people some favors, do favors to them wherever you feel you can help anyone, and especially where it does not cost much to you. And this was something which was taught to me by my very first teacher in life, which is my dad, that, hey, if it does not matter much to you, if it does not cost you much to help anyone, help them. And maybe it will come back to you, maybe it won't. Don't worry about that, but do know there is one word called karma, and that is absolutely real, and that is ... that you all know. So help people. So with that, I'll move on into the final portion of my conversation, which is, now that we have done a good job of showing up, we know that people recognize us as good PMs at work. How do we really begin to stand out? How do we really begin to showcase ourselves as a great PM, not just as a good PM? And this is where I'll use, again, an advice by a very senior leader at Microsoft who I respect a lot, and he gave me an advice in our very few conversations. His name is David Seymour. And he said 3 things to me that, hey, these are the 3 things you need to do in order to be successful, especially in big tech, and also grow in your role. And I'll add a 4th thing also on top of that. So the first 3 things he said were the first one is a very obvious thing, but it's also surprising how many places it gets ignored. Impact. You need to deliver impact. You need to think impact. And it needs to be a part and parcel of your life, in the sense, he and I have a running joke that, hey, even if you sneeze, that should count towards a business objective. So try to think, what metric are you impacting through every conversation, every activity of your day. That does not mean that sometimes that you always be very specific about it. Mr. Pichai himself said that you should sometimes also run after risky bets, which might not have any great outcome. So it's important to pursue them as well. But I would kind of hybridize it in a way, inventing a word, in the sense that, hey, it's the projected impact or potential impact there that you can always, again, quantify it as. So think about impact always. The second thing I would say is something, I'll borrow the words of again, a senior leader, Heather Ellickson, in my organization, who said that all PMs are leaders by default. And that was such a powerful statement, because it talks about initiative. And the initiative is that, The fact is that all leaders have to take initiative. You shouldn't have to expect or wait for someone else to take an initiative. And so you should take those, especially connect them to the first one. Take initiative which will have an impact on whatever OKR, whatever thing you're trying to influence. So we have to really figure out what are the right initiatives as well, and just execute them, get buy-in for them, and then really get them cracking. An example, the Spotlight series that I just shared with you. The third one is super interesting. Before I share that, I have a quick question here. Product management, of course, how many people believe product management is the easiest job in the world? Yeah, see, I had to do one which would naturally want you to keep your hand down. So how many of us believe that product management does get frustrating at times? There you go. So this is what that leader told me. And it didn't make, I'll be honest, it didn't make a lot of sense to me at that point of time. I was like, hey, why is this person telling me to manage my emotions? Of course, I know how to manage my emotions and blah, blah, blah. But it eventually sunk in. It really meant that, hey, you have to, of course, keep your emotions, positive emotions, to drive your passion and to drive your work, which is why we're in product management. But manage our negative emotions, which kind of come up many times. If I'm being very honest, I get frustrated many times, I think at least once daily, on a daily basis. And it's really important to manage those emotions in the right way. It can be a case, and I have literally known people who got into trouble waters for this, where they kind of let out their emotions in even a tiny fraction of it, of negative emotions, showing that it kind of puts you in bad waters. All the work that you do for making an impact, all the initiatives you do will measure to nothing if you're not able to manage your emotions well. And there are different ways all of us can do it. I won't spend time into how we can do it. Maybe that's a follow-on chat we can have, but it's really important to manage your emotions. Last one, which I'll come to, is, I really need to pick it up, is a mystery power. So I'll skip, in order to have some time to have some questions in the end, I'll skip the question I was planning to ask here, which is, can you guys name a few superpowers? Of course, we've been through today, and we can rattle them off like anything. But let's quickly think about, I'll just rattle them off myself. We have spoken about them: data analysis, tech debt analysis, stakeholder management, competency, warmth. I'll just give you the answer. What I feel is really important to even drive those first three in the first place: impact, initiative, managing emotions. The thing which really enables that is something connected to this, that, hey, it's a teamwork. It's a team sport. PM is not an individual role, even though some people would say it is. All of us maybe are individual contributors, but we all know that, hey, our success doesn't depend on us individually. And then the second word, which I think has been said a couple of times, which is called influencing without authority. And so this is where all this comes down to. Warmth, I said, is literally the most important thing, which has been found in studies, that it is the most important factor required to influence people. And now, once you have warmth, we already spoke about that. How do you go forward? And this is where I say that there is something called warmth on steroids, which is called empathy. And that's, my dear friends, is what I believe is that mystery power which really fuels the first three things that I said there. This word cloud, like, I can talk about it all day, but I don't have that time. So I'll let you guys read it. But basically, I'll just decode empathy in a really quick manner, what it means and how do I practice it or grow it. The four things that I have here on this last slide is, the first one is listening. We all want to be good listeners. Some people, I saw in some conversations I was having, some people were also discussing this, that how do we really get to know people, or how do we build relationships? And it's all about listening. The better you're able to listen to people, understand their constraints, understand their concerns, understands their OKRs, understands what they're trying to influence. I think a question was there that if there are competing, two stakeholders, how do you resolve that? To me, that's like really understanding beforehand, having done your homework of knowing what their competing priorities are, and then really trying to find a win-win way there. So that's where listening becomes super important. The second one I would say is common language. And by language, I do not mean that, hey, I speak in Hindi and you also speak in Hindi with me. I'm not expecting you to do that. But what I am meaning here is, let's say you love cricket and I obviously, I love cricket. So if you talk to me in cricket terms, I love you. I mean, I'll think you are the best person to ever work with. And that's what I try to model, not in a fake manner, of course, but I do whenever I get to know a new person, I try to find out our common interests. And that's how, I can really have a deep, meaningful connection with them and grow that warmth on steroids. The third thing I want to say here is always assume positive intent. And this, I'm being honest, this has been the single most important thing which I've learned in the last couple of years, which has really helped me manage my emotions, in the right way. A lot of time it will happen that, especially in the remote culture that we are a part of right now, a lot of things are happening at home, a lot of things are happening in your social circle or whatnot. And that can influence the way sometimes we word something or sometimes we write something. And instead of thinking that, hey, this person thought bad about me or like this and that, just assume positive intent and give at least everyone at least 3-4 strikes before you really start to even think that they have something against you. And trust me, 99% of the cases it will come across as, oh, there was nothing to worry about in the first place. So assume positive intent. And the last thing I'll leave you here with is, I am at time, I see as well, is the most important thing. I did say assume positive intent was the most important thing, so maybe I'll say this is the second most important, is the platinum rule that another product leader taught me about, and I didn't know about it, maybe you guys do, is that you want to treat people the way they want to be treated instead of how you want to be treated. And that has made a world of difference the minute I've started to practice it. It's really hard to do. It's not doable unless you are good in the first 3 things, especially the very first one, but it's really important to do that. So that kind of concludes what I had here to share with you, everyone. And I hope that was helpful, and I'm always up for a follow-up chat if you guys want to, and I'll hand it back to Hamad.
We can do a few questions if anybody have any questions for Nitin.
All right, don't everybody speak at once.
Hi there, thank you very much for the presentation. You're talking about managing emotions. I think that's probably one of my biggest challenge. Now that we have a bit of time, can you speak a little bit about it? Maybe some tricks that you...
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Let me go quickly into trick mode. One is, I'll say that, always have a happy place that I think of. For instance, my happy place is, I would say, just go read about cars or, read about the latest movie which is coming in. So figure out A, your happy place where you want to kind of distract yourself with. B, one thing which has worked really well, and that was again suggested to me by my boss, Alea McFadden, is take a step back. A lot of time it happens that, hey, you are in the middle of your day, something bad happens. Even if you have, let's say, a meeting after that, it's better to just like pull yourself back from that meeting, make up an excuse, and just like give yourself that time to process that and like get back to neutral level. So that stepping back is extremely, extremely important. And the missed meetings do not count as much as how I'm able to then get back and really kind of ensure that no negative, no damage is there to relationship. And the last thing I would say is, in terms of happy place, again, you look at people around you and you look at your family, you look at your friends and you talk to them. And that again kind of, helps you realize, get perspective. That thing is not as important as we are thinking it to be. So those are a few things.
Thank you.
Can you talk about I know the last one, treat people, usually I've heard the way you want to be treated. So how do you look into how they want to be treated? Can you elaborate that?
Great question, thanks for that. And the first one is also a great question, thank you for that as well. Yes, you're absolutely right. That's what I had heard as well at that time. And we called it the golden rule. The golden rule is treat people the way you want to be treated. This was a revelation to me, and I'll give you an example. For instance, let's say a colleague at work, she prefers to do more async conversations versus my organic preference is to just jump on a quick call, 2 minutes and thresh it out and just get done with it. So the minute I kind of understood that, hey, she prefers to have it async, I started to, be flexible. I think someone here was saying that, it's important to be flexible. And I kind of started doing that. Like, hey, I started sending async updates. And what that did to my relationship with that person is, they really, first of all, of course, liked that, hey, we were having those async updates. And they kind of actually then got more invested into understanding more about me. And it opened up their stance the next time we spoke, and they asked me like, hey, do you prefer actually calls? And I said yes, and then now we have calls as well. Versus if in the first place I would have pushed them, oh, I prefer calls, and so let's jump on a call. Wouldn't have been very pretty. So that's kind of an example.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that.
Can take one last question.
Hey Nitin, this is Kashif here from KPMG. So empathy, you said it's a big word, right? Like for example, I liked your images. I like cricket. I moved from the US, so I think it's easier for me to build an empathy with you with that kind of interests and having common similarities. But has it worked all the time? Have you seen not working? I mean, it's really hard, right, to have that kind of relationship. So I just want to ask if it has failed anytime.
Many times. It has failed many times, especially I would say early in my career. It was very hard for me to kind of build that. It was easy for me, as you said, to build relationship with people, let's say I had very easily identifiable common things with. But it can be complicated once we start to kind of get into very diverse teams, very diverse cultures. And so the way I've tried to then hack it is I've tried to really, the first conversation I have about that person, I have this question that I absolutely will ask that person. Doesn't matter if we don't talk about work at all, but I will ask them that, hey, what do you do to unwind from work? And they tell me a few things, and I try to find out genuine things which actually I might be interested in as well. So I'll give you an example. One of my organizational leaders, when I had a first chat with her, she's born and brought up in Canada, and of course, there are differences there. But I asked her, and then one thing came out was she likes reality TV shows, and I have also been made to like recently reality TV shows, and also she likes board games. And I was like, hey, I love Catan as well, and I have Catan on my phone, and my laptop is sitting on a Catan board game, literally. And so I just try to, trust me, it's once you start really actively thinking along those lines, and I have a word for that, which I even use in those conversations, what are your happy places? I ask those people straight up. And you do find out some things. Sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier, but you do get there eventually.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. I think we're out of time. Thank you so much, Nitin.
Thank you, everyone.